and I get almost 3/4 the way around, and the wind swirled, and I felt it hit me in the back of the neck, and I'm looking at the buck, and his head snaps up, and he looks right over top of me, and it was like seconds. He looked down and locked eyes with me, and I was like, I got to jump up and shoot because he is going to run. And sure enough, like...
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails podcast. Sitting here in Vermont with
Samantha Gouveia.
Morgan Gouveia.
Nate Corey.
All right. How you guys doing?
Good.
Well, we just had a really good dinner.
Yeah, a little venison, some sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, I should say, veggies.
It was very good. Pleasantly surprised. Usually don't get fed for these things. Yeah, so you guys are a deer hunting couple.
We are.
It's rare.
Yeah, I mean...
There's not a ton of them around, really.
No.
I mean, it's kind of like farmers, you know? Yeah. A farmer, you know, when they farm together, they stay together. You hunt together, you stay together.
That's true. Yeah, so do you guys want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourselves and like what you do for work and stuff like that?
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Again, my name's Morgan Gouveia.
Yeah.
I've been in the HVAC plumbing business for a while. I just kind of went out on my own, started up my own business, Perseverance Plumbing. And when it came up with that name, because that's kind of what got me there is Perseverance. And so since I started the company, hoping to work a little bit toward getting a little bit more time to be able to spend doing what I love. And it's been a journey for sure. It's been an interesting start.
What about you, Sam?
So I'm actually a manager for Sattelight Auto Glass. I run our Rutland, Vermont location. I've worked there for 5 years now. I'm not always in that location. I do quite a bit of shop hopping.
Really?
Yeah. Mondays and Wednesdays right now, I'm in our Latham, New York location. I help manage the Williston, Vermont location when he takes vacations.
Yep.
I've done quite a bit of training for them as far as new managers and customer advocates that they bring in. So I'm pretty much all over the place with the company.
Do they give you time off to hunt?
Yeah. I mean, I have a really good team that works underneath me. So if we have a slow day, I look at them, I'm like, I'm going to be in late tomorrow, boys. Or weather's looking good. I got to go sit in a tree somewhere. So I'm thankful for the team that I have.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to have a flexible schedule, you know, doing the things that we like to do. And like you just became self-employed, like you said, and that's like the goal.
You're right.
Is to become.
It's more of a dream that you kind of envision that you're going to have all this time. But definitely to start, it's not the dream you think it is. It's there's a lot of extras there you don't realize are there until you start it. But I think now that the foot is in that door, I can work toward a final goal, and it might not be this year, it might not be next year, but in years to come, that goal will be reached over time. So the good part is when you work for yourself, I pretty much make it known, my customers know that, listen, I work my butt off all summer long.
Yep.
Late nights, I mean, she knows there were nights that I don't get home till 10 sometimes because I'm trying to get one job done to move to the next job. And I know you guys have talked about that in previous podcasts. It's a personality thing. You got to want it to do it. And that was kind of the goal, was to finally get to that point to where I can kind of separate my time to do more of the things that I love to do and still be able to work in that work schedule to give my family a better living as well.
Right. Now, switching gears a little bit, Morgan, you run a Facebook group, Northeast Heavyweight Whitetails.
Yeah, Northern East Heavyweight Whitetails.
Northern East Heavyweight Whitetail. Okay.
So the reason I called it that, I had a buddy tell me, he's like, why didn't you just call it the Tri-State? And I'm like, well, to me, the Northern East has always been the three big states: Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine.
Yep.
And like when I was growing up, I'm 34, so I saw parts of the back then where when guys pulled into a reporting station, there was never any mention of inches. It was always how much do you weigh, and I've always been obsessed with big-bodied bucks. Yep. I can just remember being a little kid sitting in my grandparents' house, and they had a big cathedral ceiling in one section of their house, and his big 8-pointer that he had shot on a mountain here in southern Vermont was always up there, and I'd always ask him to tell me the story. Tell me the story, Pop. Tell me the story. And I just will never forget that deer weighed 205 clean dressed. Yep. And I always wanted to shoot a buck 205. Like, that was my dream. I just wanted to shoot a buck over 200 pounds.
Yep.
And just recently, now with the time that I have learned over the years, because we'll talk more about that, the kind of the jog that I've gone through in stages of my life to get to where I am and the confidence and going forward. I'm really focused on trying to capture that goal, but I just love seeing big deer. And that's why I wanted to start that group, because I know there's followers out there that like and still follow that old tradition of those big, heavy-bodied bucks. So
now I think you do a great job with the group. I think it's one of the better groups on Facebook, and you do a lot of like situational questions, which are very thoughtful. And I find myself at night reading the comments for like an hour, like going through and reading it. And it's like very educational. And I think it's great what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And that was the whole point of it. Like, I had a couple people that were like, oh, well, it's just a scenario, every scenario is different. It could change in the situation, at that time. But that really wasn't the point of what I was trying to get across. What I was trying to come up with scenarios that it would get guys' minds working on, like, okay, if this happens.
Yep.
And I'm reaching out to those people that may have had that situation happen, that might have a younger tracker or somebody that's just getting into tracking that said, I don't know what I'm doing, but if I walk up onto this, it kind of makes them think like, oh, hey, this guy mentioned that this happened. I can try it. You know what? It's a 50-50 shot, whether it's going to work or whether it's not.
Right.
But you're 50% higher if you try one of those things you read than if you didn't know anything at all.
Right.
So that was, and it seems to have really good response on it. People are very good. And I will say, I can't thank people enough for people really keep the group clean. There's no bad comments. Most of the guys are really good with their responses and stuff. And it's been awesome. It's been a cool experience for sure.
Yeah. And if anybody's getting into tracking, for sure, they need to follow that page, because it's better than like a book sometimes, you know, because like all these situations you're throwing out, you're getting to see all these like top tier deer hunters response, the guys that wouldn't write a book, but are still the cream of the crop when it comes to tracking, giving their 2 cents on situations. So,
and it's the guys you probably wouldn't hear about a lot.
Exactly.
So that's what's cool about it too, is it kind of gives those guys their
voice.
Chance.
Their voice. Yeah. And so, if you guys are getting into tracking and you want to learn some stuff, definitely Northern East Heavyweight Whitetails. It's a public group, right?
Yep.
You search it up, it comes right up.
Yeah,
you just
public.
have to.
Yeah. And then I did start one on Instagram, same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I more did that. I think that one is Northern East Heavyweight Whitetails. And then I think it's got _ NEHW. And I think that was more for that focus of just the pictures things.
Right.
Have guys DM me the pictures of their heavyweight bucks, and not all of them are 200 pounds. Some of them are not, 190 pounds, but a lot of it too is the focus was not always just about shooting a buck over 200 pounds. There's a lot of guys that have sent in 180, 190, 170 pound bucks that just have incredible stories. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm a sucker for a good deer story. I could sit down for hours in a deer camp and listen to people talk about deer hunting and just those old stories one of my favorites is Rick Labby's one where he was walking across the log and that deer jumped up from underneath him and he got his horn wrapped in the tree. Like those stories right there are like, oh yeah, man, you just once in a lifetime story that could probably never happen again.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely a very good spot to read some good stories.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So you were always a big turkey guy.
Yeah.
Growing up and into your like 20s. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that and your kind of transition into more of a, now you said earlier, you're like sick for the whitetail hunting. So,
yeah. So it started at a younger age. And I think a lot of that was success driven. I know a lot of guys get upset when you talk about that because I don't like to call turkey hunting easy.
Yep.
But if you were to scale them for the challenge, it is you hit a turkey on the right day. Mm-hmm. He's coming. Yep. And I'm not saying that deer's not like that, but the work to find that deer that's ready is a lot different because they don't talk like a turkey does. Mm-hmm. I love turkey hunting. I mean, I've traveled all across the country. I've killed turkeys in 13 different states, and I've passed up. I've come home empty-handed just because there was states that I didn't want to pull the trigger. So, but it also helped me learn woodsmanship and stuff like that.
Yep.
But as time went on, I started having more and more success. So when I was growing up, we used to do like little family deer drives. And then I always felt like I was that one guy that always got put in the spot where it was either the deepest muck or the thickest stuff and whatever. Yep. So my grandfather pulled me aside one day because he was always more of the loner type. And he's like, hey, he says, you want to kill a buck? He says, you got to go up there on the mountains. He said, you're going to learn more by yourself going up on that mountain and paying attention to the details that the deer are leaving there for you than you are down here just going through a piece of woods. Mm-hmm. So when I started doing that, I met a gentleman. I was working in Manchester at the time, and he came in, and him and I started talking a little bit more, and he invited me to his deer camp. And this was like one of the first real deer camps I ever went to, because I know there's beer camps, there's different, a lot of guys will stay up the first night of deer camp and they'll play cards. This was every single guy that stayed in this deer camp, they only got 2 weeks off of work. They were there to deer hunt. And that to me, that was everything I wanted. And we'd come back and we'd talk about what we saw during the day. And before all the youth started coming to the camp with us, everybody hunted all day. Nobody ever went back to that camp to get warmed up. But everybody went out all day. So when you got back to that camp, if you cracked one beer to have it with dinner and everybody was zonked out on the couch and you'd get up, go to bed. I mean, you were just tired from being in the cold and walking all day or doing so. That started to make the transition. Well, then I killed my first buck in 2012. Took me 12 years to kill my first buck. Yep. And a guy told me, he goes, now that you've killed that first one, he goes, they're going to start coming easier. Well, I didn't kill another buck for a couple of years, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Then I started putting two together. I was missing a lot. Like, I was seeing bucks. I was just missing a lot. I mean, I got a journal over there that I would probably rather not even talk about. I get pretty tore up when I see deer, and I've had seasons where I've missed multiple bucks. Like, it's not.
You should tell the story that you told earlier.
Okay, yeah. So I can't remember exactly what year it was. I think it was 2017. I had the first weekend. We really hadn't seen much, so I was going to go back to the camp the second weekend, and they usually packed up and went home. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just hang out half a day, and I'll help you guys pack up, get out of here, and whatever. And finally, the guy was like, dude, you're wasting your day. He's like, you need to go get in the woods. And I'm like, I feel bad. I don't want to leave you guys here with all the work. He's like, we got all day. He's like, we're done for until next weekend. We might come back. And I'm like, okay. So I took off and I went to this one spot, and I remember walking up the ridge, and the whole time I'm walking up the ridge, the wind is blowing, the trees are banging against each other, there's branches falling out of the tree. And I'm like, I'm never going to see a deer tonight. But I'm like, this one spot is a funnel. Like, maybe by chance. I'm like, but I just don't see deer moving in this. And I got up on this spot and I'm sitting there and I'm facing the direction that I think the deer are going to come from. There was like a little rise and they normally come up and go over. So I'm sitting there and it gets to be about like 4:30-ish, somewhere in there. I think it was long before shooting light was done. And all of a sudden I just remember the wind died down for like 2 minutes. And I'm like, I'm going to call. I'm like, what do I got to lose?
Right.
So I tipped one of those tipper cans over a little bit and I grunted a couple times. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I hear this snap. So I'm like looking up in the trees and I'm kind of like looking to my left and my right. And I'm like, it's got to be just branches falling out of the trees. I mean, the wind was whipping. And I'm like, man. So the wind died down one more time and I grunted a couple more times. And all of a sudden I hear this snap and I'm like, my God, that sounded like it was right behind me. So I know nobody can see this on the video, but I literally like kind of lean to my right and I look over my shoulder and I catch a glimpse of brown and it's like 6 yards behind me. And I'm like, that is a deer standing there. So I slide a little bit further and I look over my shoulder and he wasn't quite as big as this buck.
Yep.
He probably not quite the beam length.
Probably like 100.
The points were
110 incher.
Probably.
Yep.
And he's standing there and he's looking over his shoulder like back down past me. And I'm lefty. And I'm sliding. And I have my grandfather's gun. I wanted so bad. I've never killed a buck with this gun. And I wanted so bad to kill one with it. And I'm sliding the gun because I can shoot both ways.
Yep.
And I get almost 3/4 the way around and the wind swirled and I felt it hit me in the back of the neck. And I'm looking at the buck and his head snaps up and he like looks right over top of me. And it was like seconds. He looked down and locked eyes with me. And I was like, I got to jump up and shoot because he is going to run. And sure enough, like the minute I jumped up, he turned to run. Well, I let 3 fly at him. I didn't even come close to touching him. But that was one. And then the following weekend, I had this plan that I was going to work up this long draw following the brook. So the thermals pulled my scent down, and I wasn't going to disturb anything that would be up on the ridge. And I was going to make a big hook and then hunt my way back in the afternoon down that ridge.
Yep.
So I'm booking it up through there, and I finally get to where I'm going to turn, and I'm going to start going up to hunt the ridge back. And I literally walked probably 20 yards off the edge of the river, and I slipped and I fell. And I just remember it being super thick off to my right. And I got up and had some choice words for myself, and it was pretty out loud, like talking to myself. And I get up and I'm looking around, and I happen to look off to my right, and I was just in disbelief. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that is a deer standing there. So I pull the gun up and I'm looking at it through the scope and I'm like, that is definitely a deer. And all of a sudden its tail flickered and he starts walking up through the brush and I can see all of a sudden a giant crotch and I'm like, that's definitely a legal buck.
Yep.
So he walks up a little bit further, gets up onto this little, like, it's like a little finger ridge. It's not very big. It's just almost like a roll in the ridge. He gets up on top of it and he starts to turn to the right. Now I'm off to his left. So I reached into my pocket really quick and I hit the tipper can and all of a sudden his head snaps around and I swear to God, it felt like he was looking right through me. It looked like he was locked right onto me. But I don't think just by his reaction, and this is the part that confuses me. Like I notice all these little details. Like I don't get shaky buck fever, but I get that like overthinking it. Out of placement stuff.
Right.
Well, I drop down to a knee, I pull up and I put it on the deer and I flick the safety off and he like locks it up. And that time he was looking right at me.
Yep.
And he was broadside and all I remember is putting the crosshair behind his shoulder. And I think I yarned that trigger so hard, I probably shot 4 feet over his back. And all I remember is I dropped the gun down to my side and I remember yelling out loud, "Yet, hole, you just missed again." And the deer is standing there watching me the whole time. Like, had I just kept the gun there, I could have shot again and killed him. I know it, or missed him again, one of the two. But he literally looked at me like, oh my God, that guy just yelled, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, then I was really mad at myself. But that was just one of those things. I think that one was more of a I think he was a big 4-pointer.
Yep.
That one.
Yep.
I couldn't tell if he had brows. I wasn't really counting. I just knew he was legal. So,
Buck fever.
Yeah, that's just 2 of the examples.
That's you learned, right?
Well, I would have thought, but there's been a lot more since then.
Well, you know what? If you didn't get that worked up, it wouldn't be as fun to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty fun.
That's what makes it worth it.
If it doesn't make you that excited, then you probably wouldn't be this sick for it.
No, I can't get a word in edgewise with Nate sitting over here.
I like to shoot a lot. I don't know if they make enough bullets.
But that's
Nate, you do like to pull the trigger, don't you? Yeah.
That's something I've been focusing on a lot more. My buddy Kyle Shum and I have been talking about it, and he's been awesome. He's been a wicked encouragement. We talk back and forth all the time, and we just talk about little things to try to improve on, and like that focus and stuff. And what I've been doing this year is I bought them a while ago. I don't know why I wasn't doing it more, but I've been doing a lot of dry fire training out in my backyard. I bought snap caps this year, and I went to the pit the other day for the first time and shot, and really tried to focus on squeezing. And I know it's not your heart's not racing, you're not in the moment, but that's the first time where I was actually squeezing the trigger and putting 4 bullets on a piece of paper at the range freehand. So I'm hoping that muscle memory is going to help build up some of that. So it takes the thinking part out of it, and then I'm just doing it rather than.
Right. And you said a word earlier that I think will resonate with a lot of people is it's not like a buck fever. It's like a panic.
Yes.
It's like you see him or you don't know if he's about to run or he's about to, and that's like, I think when I was younger and I was learning, it's like sometimes the best thing to do is just wait like another step or another, you know what I mean? Cause sometimes a better shot will, come up but then, I've also lost bucks because I didn't take the first opportunity, but so you got to find that sweet spot of not doing things too prematurely, but then also letting things play out.
Right.
And, letting that, beating that panic because I think everybody feels it, when you're tracking a buck or you see a buck and, you don't know if you're going to get the shot or, he's walking away, quartering away. It's real easy to mess up. Yeah, that's for sure.
I definitely do. I think some people have to work harder at it, and then some people are just instinctual people. Yep. Like my neighbor, that guy is just instinctual. Yep. It just happens for him. And I'm envious of somebody that's like that just has that instinct. I mean, it's like snap shooters. I don't think it takes a lot of practice to get real good at snap shooting, but there are some guys that are just naturally good at it. I mean, it's probably like anything with sports. Some guys are just naturally good at sports and stuff.
Right.
But I think the one thing that really affected me, that made it hard for me, was we didn't shoot a lot when I was a kid. Like 22, we did not shoot a lot. And it was expensive. That was always, so that's why we didn't shoot a lot. And now hindsight, I want to make sure that I want to work, but hopefully they took after my wife because she seems to hit everything she shoots at. So
that's good.
But
I think I grew up rabbit hunting with a beagle.
Yep.
And man, any good traits that I have shooting, I think I got rabbit hunting with a beagle.
Yeah.
Because literally everything you're shooting at, like I started when I was just a little kid going with my buddy and his dad, and everything you were shooting at was running.
Yeah.
In the brush. So you get that as a kid, you get those moving targets, and you get that.
Right.
I think that's so good. I think the younger you start, the better doing stuff like that, or even like shooting partridge flying or skeet, I think would be great for a kid to start doing, because I think that's such a.
It makes me think of something. So in your older podcast, you used to say, what would your self tell your 20-year-old self?
Yeah.
Don't shoot 3.5-inch turkey loads. Don't think you're some big tough guy, because I honestly think that's where a lot of my problems stem from. I mean, those things absolutely rock you, and I think that's where I really started that muscle memory building of, bang, it's coming. And with a shotgun, you're throwing BBs downrange. You
got to be like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're turkey hunting and you're shooting a big 3.5, you flinch a little bit. It's a pretty good chance that some BBs are still going to hit that if you're within your ethical range. But with a rifle, that's a totally different story.
Where are you shooting for a rifle?
So I grew up on pumps. That's all. My grandfather had originally bought one of the first 35 Whalens when it came out in the 7600.
Really?
Yep. So
That might make you flinch too.
now
You're not lying.
Yeah. So which is, I may be wrong, but I thought at one time that I had read that the difference between an 06 180 grain and a 235 Whelen grain was only like a pound and a half difference recoil. So really, it's not. I could be wrong. Maybe it's more than that, but maybe that was me just seeing what I thought I wanted to see. But I could have swore I read that in a magazine one time.
Yeah, you
and I
could
thought,
be right.
I'm like, if that is the case, 30-06 is a whole lot cheaper to shoot than a 35 Whelen.
Yep.
If I buy one of each, because I always said my ideal gun to hunt with would be a 35 Whelen carbine. When they came out with those and I heard Grice had one, like I scooped one up because it is.
I got one.
That's what I got too.
Yeah, I just love.
With a peep?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
They hang so nice. Something about the barrel's lighter, I
Yeah.
swear. It's because I think there's less. Is that true, or am I making that up? Is the barrel lighter on a 35 Whelen? Because there's less steel.
Yeah, there is a little bit, but I don't think it's enough to.
I swear the 35 Whelen hangs better when you shoulder it, but maybe it's just me.
But
It just feels better to
is
me.
your 06 scoped?
Yeah, so that's
It,
probably
it might
too,
be a
yeah.
little bit. It might be more the balance than
Could
it is
be.
anything. But I grew up on pumps. That's what bums me out right now about the way the market is, because
I know.
it's just.
They're like gold.
Oh my God! You have to sell your house to buy one now, and the worst part is
This guy's life savings is in 7,600.
yeah. So it's like those. I have one of each that I hunt. My 30-06 is scoped, but
Yep.
my Whalen's more for my tracking gun. That's
Yep.
more for the brush and stuff like that. Which this is fun because it'll lead into another story we'll talk about later in the podcast. But growing up on pumps, I'm left-handed. So that's what I grew up on because I could shoot ambidextrous. For me, a left-handed bolt made no sense growing up. Maybe this is kind of weird that I would think about this as a kid, but if I buy left-handed pumps or left-handed bolts and I have kids and they're all right-handed, now where am I?
No, you're right.
I don't have anything to hand down. So
Yeah.
I just think that and it just fits me better. I
Yep.
like a pump. It's what I run. That's what I shoot for a turkey gun. And
Yep.
it's
It's what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You ever
It's-
get that hot brass down
Oh yeah.
your shirt?
Yeah.
Being a lefty?
Being a
Yeah.
lefty.
Dang, I never thought of that.
I had one day I was shooting and I have a 750 and a 35, and one of the brass came off and it bounced off the wood and it landed on my arm and I still have a scar from it.
Oh,
It was so I jumped up off the bench real quick. It was pretty
branded
crazy.
yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dang. So what's the story you were going to talk about with the...
So that would be
buck.
the buck this year in Maine.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear some from Sam first?
Yeah, we can do... Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Sam.
Thanks, Morgan.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
so...
You were just sitting over there so nice and talkative.
When did you start hunting? Is it when you met Morgan?
No, so funny enough, I'm a couple years older than Morgan, but we compared our hunter education safety cards, and we actually have been hunting the same amount of time. We got our license the same year.
Oh, cool.
I started as a girl. My dad had myself and my sister, and he took us in the woods, and I'm kind of the one that took to it.
Cool.
Yep. My rifle buck that I got last year was actually the first notch that I was able to check off. I've been rifle hunting 20 years, and that was the first time I filled a Vermont tag.
Not a bad first buck either.
No, nope.
It's a dandy.
Except for I was 5 months pregnant, very allergic to deer dander, and my husband is 8 hours away in Maine when it happened.
Oh my gosh.
So
How convenient.
I did not have a headlamp because it was a spur of the moment hunt.
Nice.
There was snow on the ground, so my phone died because I was taking pictures, and I sat there in the dark next to my pointer for an hour before his uncle could get to me.
Oh my gosh.
Not to mention that she's super allergic to deer hair.
Yeah, super allergic.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
It's not fun.
yeah,
She's stuffed up right now.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
That's the nice voice that you're
Oh, yeah.
getting is because
Because you just killed a deer.
I did.
Yeah, do you want to talk? Yesterday, you got a beauty. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So
you're a big bow hunting's your favorite, right?
it really is. So, and I only got into bow hunting I've been with you 5 years.
It's like 7 years. I think you
so
said.
probably 7.
So what do you like about it more?
How she explained it to me was she did it herself.
Yeah.
She took the initiative to do it herself.
My family isn't. We're not archery hunters. We've done rifle forever, but I just it's warmer.
Yeah.
I get cold very easily. I actually finally invested in a heated vest and heated socks.
Nice. Should get you some of those, Maggie.
I was done with being cold. I wanted to be out there, but it's hard to stay out there when you're cold. So I finally put some money into some gear that was going to keep me warmer, and I don't know. I wasn't seeing a lot. I really didn't have any more success at it but you have to be one with the woods when you're shooting anything with a bow.
Yeah.
They have to be closer to you. You have to be as still as possible because they're going to see you. It's just, your scent, all of it, you have to be, that's really the only way to put it, is one with the woods in order to get that close to an animal.
Yeah, it's a much more intimate hunt.
It is.
Okay, you're right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
because you're 30 yards and in probably, right?
yeah.
I mean, that's what I try to like. I don't want to shoot much more than 30 yards with a bow.
Yeah.
And it's not like for the areas that we hunt, it's not like you have a spot where a random branch might not be sticking out that you can't
see.
Right.
So it's a
challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, it's part of what I love about it.
The challenge.
Yeah. You have to be right there, and everything has to play out just right. Last night when we went into the woods, we don't run a lot of cameras. And I was in this spot last year. I actually got my doe in this spot, and on the other side of this spot was where I got my 8-pointer during rifle. And I just wanted to go in because the nuts this year, what we were seeing, they were there, but they were rotten. They weren't good. And there's a clear cut there. And I wanted to see if they were still using it. It was more of a recon mission. I wanted to see what was going on. And I got in there and there was tracks everywhere. And I had to cut through a clear cut to get to where I was sitting. And there was just beds and paths all through it. I said, okay, well.
Do you have a stand or are you on the ground?
So I use a climber.
Okay.
So I carry it in and carry it out. So I get to where I'm going to set up, and I no more than sat down, and I see a doe walking on the other side of the clear cut. She walks down, walks to the end of it, and crosses, feeding. I don't know what she heard. She took a couple bounds out of sight. She was kind of in and out of where I could see her. And then she hit the softwood trees that were kind of behind me to my right. So I'm listening for her, but keeping in mind that the mountain's to my left, so things could still be coming down. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, that tree just looks different than it did when I first sat down. And I'm paying attention, and all of a sudden it's a deer. She's feeding on this clear-cut greens that have grown up. And I was like, perfect. I had already got my rangefinder out. I knew different points that she walked right to me, stood underneath me for 15 minutes. And I said, okay, perfect. We had actually had the conversation that we had 3 deer in the freezer from last year. We're not desperate for meat. I'm not going to make a foolish shot if I don't have to. And she walked away, never gave me an opportunity. So she got out of sight. I got sat back down. I can hear walking up to my left, but I can't see anything at that point. So, I'm just listening, sitting there, and I look down. I have my phone out, and I hear a stick break. And I look up, and all I could see was antlers outside his ears. And he's just walking directly at me. and he stops in the same spot that doe did underneath me. And he stood there. He smelled the tree. He just kind of like stood there, and I hear leaves once again to my left coming down the mountain. I see another deer, and I'm like, okay, another doe's here. I got to pay attention to what that one's doing so she doesn't spook the one under me. And I can hear this deer messing around to my left, and I look again, and I'm like, that is not a doe. That is definitely another buck. And I'm looking. I didn't see any brow tines. I'm like, that's a 4-pointer. And he sees this 8 standing down here, and so he messes around. I got to watch him make a rub on a tree with his antlers, and it was an opportunity that I never thought that I'd experience in Vermont. I mean, you don't hear that kind of stuff happening. Not even just watching the deer make the rub, but having a second buck come in after that first one. And he walked straight to me. I mean, that 4-pointer gave me multiple opportunities. But to me, I've always wanted to shoot a nice buck with my bow. It had to be like a once-in-a-lifetime buck to take away my rifle season.
Yeah.
And that 4-pointer to me just wasn't. Now, the 8 that was standing directly under me, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And so the 4-pointer followed that doe trail away, which made the buck, the 8-pointer turn and walk back around in front of me. And he got to about 12 yards.
12 yards.
And turned just enough. So
Should have had a cameraman there, man. Holy smokes.
We've talked about GoPros for a little while now.
Yeah.
he turned just enough, so I went through my steps. Ear, nose, peep, pin.
Yep.
So you're not just in the moment pulling the bow up and forgetting where your anchor points are. I've gone through it in my head over and over and over again. I sit there in the tree stand with nothing happening, saying it to myself. String hits my arm.
Oof.
I luckily have nocturnals on my arrows, so I knew the arrow was in him when he took off. He gets out of sight, and I hear him blow. The 4-pointer's still standing there. And I immediately call Morgan. I was like, you need to come to me. I was like, I got an arrow and an 8-pointer. He's like, you're kidding. No,
I think I
I'm
had
not.
different words, but
I was like, but I can't get down because the 4-pointer's still hanging out here. He's like, seriously? I was like, yeah. He's like 30 yards from me still.
Oh my gosh.
So got down, got blood, but I knew with it hitting my arm, it was further back than we wanted. So we backed out, which was the longest 3 hours of my life.
oh yeah. So I'll step in on this part of the story, and I'll let her finish. So I killed a buck back in 2019 where I made a hit further back than I thought, just low light, and we waited 4 hours on that hit from the time that I killed it to the time that we went back, and it was quite a walk to get in there. Just from that instance, I immediately told her from the pictures of the blood, because I didn't go into her. I said, just come out to me. Don't walk out the way you went in. Walk away, because he had kind of run in the direction that she walked in from. So I'm like, walk out, come get to the road from a different angle. You don't want to take a chance at bumping him. And we got, when she finally got to me and I was standing at the road waiting for her, she was like, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, I know this is not what you're going to want to hear. I said, but we do not have a definite point of impact. You're not 100% sure where you hit the deer. We're giving him 4 hours minimum.
Right.
I'm like, we'll come back here later.
It was early.
Right.
Yeah, I released the arrow at 6:05. So
good.
we had time. I mean, there was
Still good light when you shot.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Good light.
yeah. I mean, and at 12 yards. I mean,
Yeah. That's
He-
yeah.
But it was one of those situations where it's like, all right, I've been here. I know this feeling. And
Yep.
she's like, I don't know whether to be excited or nervous. And I'm like, it's going to be a mixture of both. And I said, but as time goes on, the nervous feeling's going to take over from the excitement. You're excited now, adrenaline's pumping, it's happened. Now the nervous part's going to kick in, and you're going to be wondering, like, okay, what's going to happen? So we kind of like went over a couple of things, and she was telling me, like, okay, how far did the arrow look like it was sticking in? And she's like, I couldn't tell. It was the way he was turned when he ran away. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because it was on the opposite side of him. So he turned, so the arrow was
on the other side.
Yeah, and all I could see was the flashing knock.
All right, what was the reaction? She goes, he mule kicked. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so... I've never personally witnessed it, but actually, like watching the hunting public video, it seems like a lot of the hunts that they have, when they shoot a buck or they shoot a deer and it runs off for a certain distance and it stands there like, oh my God, what was that? What happened? Like they don't know. And then all of a sudden they blow. It's kind of like that. Something's wrong, and they blow really quick, and then they go to run off again. And it's not far after that blow that they either bed down or they expire.
Right.
Well, I told her, I said, I've got a good feeling about that part of it. It seems like whatever's happened, that maybe this is just a pigment of my imagination, that's what happens. But I'm like, I'm feeling a little bit more confident now. So then I'll kind of let her finish.
It was, like I said, the longest several hours of my life. We came back here and got some food into us. Our neighbor came over, and so he went back to the woods with us, and that was also the longest drive back.
I could tell.
A lot of nerves.
Yeah, she didn't say a word the whole way.
Like you said, you're nervous, you're excited, you're the anticipation, like, are we going to find it? Are we not going to find it? Did I just wound this deer? And it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so many different emotions.
Oh, yeah.
We got back in there and found a really good blood trail. And we followed it and followed it and followed it. And all of a sudden, we get to this one spot, and I look up, and there's the flashing knock. And
she scared the hell out of me. Like, she just stopped abruptly, and she's like, "Oh, I see my knock." And I'm like, because I'm holding the light, and I like banged into her, and I'm like, "Whoa, what the hell?" And she's like, "I see my knock." So my buddy
told me I wasn't allowed to just take off at that point.
That buddy that was with us, he had more of like a spotlight, and he was kind of shining the knock. Well, he couldn't see it.
He's colorblind.
So we were
blood trailing.
Yeah.
So we started creeping up a little bit more. Sorry, the mic's probably making a bunch of noise. I'm a Frenchman. I talk with my hands.
We never noticed.
So Sam and I started creeping forward a little bit, and all of a sudden he goes, "I think I see antlers." Her face, like we snapped and turned at the same time, and her face, and we turned, and he had it like right where you could see that one side of the beam sticking up.
He goes, "Those are definitely antlers."
Yeah.
I didn't.
She came unglued.
Oh my God.
Like it was crazy. Like it is. I will say it is definitely the highlight. Like I said, she said I wasn't a part of that buck last year that she shot during rifle season, so I got to kind of vicariously live through the story as she was telling it to me while I was gone. But this one, to be able to be there with her and share that emotion, and like it was good. And then to have my best friend, one of my best friends there with us, to be able to share the moment too, because he was kind of like that blood guy. I'll stand at last blood. Just keep an eye out, and I'll shine and make sure to see, because the big thing we were talking about is, all right, if we walk in here and we spot eyeballs, if we even spot eyeballs, if he keeps staring at us and doesn't turn his head away, I said, we're out of here. I said, we're going. I said, because he's still alert enough that he's paying attention.
You don't want to keep pushing him.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
That wasn't the case.
No.
He had been dead for a while.
Yeah, he is dead.
And she knows it. She very much openly admits it, that was a very lucky shot.
I did. Yep, I got very lucky. It hit much further back than I was thinking.
You got an artery.
Yeah,
I did.
In hind quarter.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna find the arrow when I skin it out, but it is buried, and I'm pretty sure it hit that femur bone and it stopped right there. But I think it severed that artery, because I did it on Onyx after, because we were using the Onyx. That was one technology thing that I think was great. So you can mark blood as you're going and keep the tracker on.
I've never done that.
To get
it's a pretty good idea.
To get a line. because at least if you're doing that and you're marking blood and you're following the track, you can kind of get a line on. So if you do lose blood,
where he's headed,
right, you might get
it's a great idea.
So when I was doing that going ahead, we would stop every couple drops of blood. And when I got home, I finally remembered, I'm like, oh, I didn't turn the tracker off. So I went back and erased all the other stuff to where the point of where we found him. And he only went like 170 yards.
Yeah.
So he bled out pretty quick.
Yeah, he was dead on his feet. Yeah.
Yep.
And what a beauty of a buck. Beauty of a buck. I think it's gonna make the Vermont minimum.
I believe it should.
It's a beauty. And
He's got a lot of character.
Yeah, what did he weigh?
He weighed 188.
188.
Yeah, he's a brute. He's
Good, heavy
definitely
one.
His neck was starting to swell up.
Yep.
So that was pretty
What
awesome.
a dandy.
Yep. I have a thing for hitting him in the ass end, apparently, though. I did the same thing with that one. He was quartered away. It was kind of last light.
Yep.
But I had my 7mm 08, and it went right up, hit him right in the heart. So
So that
Texas
is
heart shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is
it worked.
Yeah,
You know?
that's the most deadly shot there is.
He didn't even take 5 steps before he
No.
went down. I got to watch him go. So.
Oh yeah.
But I mean that experience too. He came in chasing 2 does. He came in grunting,
Really.
and that was a spur of the moment hunt. I had seen deer on the way to work. I had checked the weather. It wasn't going to change in temperature a whole lot.
Yep.
I got to work, saw the schedule. I said, "Yeah, boys, I'm leaving at 2 so I can go in the woods." And that was another. Just I was going to go in, walk around, see what was going on, and when I went in.